Well, Kerem, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm super excited about this topic of AI agents. So you've been in and around AI, machine learning for 20 odd years. So perhaps give me a little bit of background, bit of context of your experience, and then we'll get into the topic.
Yes, of course. Thank you, first of all, for having me. It's a great opportunity and obviously a topic that's close to my heart. I have been in the world of AI, machine learning, data analytics for more than 20 years. I have been in academia before I started my journey in the corporate world. While in academia, I have had interest in using machine learning as a research topic, and specifically in reinforcement learning applications in um, auction design and auction optimization area. And then I got into the corporate world in the use of data analytics at scale to understand conversion, especially in the ad tech space. I started my career in Yahoo and looked at purchase intent from a click. How does the conversion happen? How can we predict a click converting using machine learning back in the day? And over the years, obviously, we saw the booming big data AI applications across the industries, across companies, small or big. And here we are. We are in the middle of the next AI evolution with GPT and now AI agents, which is a very, very exciting time and place to be in.
And like you say, machine learning, automation has been around for a long time. There's a lot of people out there who think that AI is just a rebranding of some of these things. So, give me a little sense, a definition of AI agents from your perspective, and then we'll talk about sort of application in the real world.
Yeah. I think the way the progression has happened is obviously we had RPA, robotic process automation that came in, which inherently assumes a certain workflow existing and automates it. Obviously, the more concrete, defined the workflow is, the more applicable is RPA approach because it's defined, clear. What needs to be automated is clear. The only thing that may go wrong is if something comes up and changes the workflow, you need to change the RPA all over again. That doesn't mean it's not applicable anymore. It just has to be redesigned, redeployed, sometimes reinvented. But with the introduction of LLMs, we are able to interact with a program or an interface that talks back to us in the language we understand. Now, obviously, that brings in a bit more flexibility as to how do you interact with a architecture that is more flexible than a predefined flow, like a robotic process.
Mm.
And so, if you actually divide the pieces of the workflow into several tasks and give those tasks to what we call agents, then you can think that you can actually orchestrate the way agents, which use LLM in the background to accomplish certain tasks, come together and automate a workflow.
Mm.
Uh, Now you can actually start kind of imagining how a let's say less than well-defined workflow can be supported by a set of agents that are doing certain tasks independently, but collectively implementing or uh, bringing to life a much larger workflow, if you will.
Yeah. And will that mean that we end up with agents all also kind of overlaying over different sort of more specific AI agents in workflows and in business areas, or how will that work?
Yeah, yeah. I think the basic example is, let's say, in a procurement function. You send a request for information. A company respond or companies respond to that request for information. Then you know what you exactly want or ask from the market. Then you send an RFP to select number of companies, and then you get a response. And then you need to choose the best company that is going to accomplish the task. So that's a bit of a workflow, if you will,
Hmm.
simplified version of a procurement function. Um, and a lot of these back and forth document sending, receiving, and going through the documents and so on, today mostly done by manual kind of tasks. And people do this. You have to read through the documents. You have to understand the nuances. You need to understand who's doing what, and then you have to give a response and so on. So it's a bit of a lengthy process. Now, obviously, with an agent that not only can read a document, but also generate a document within a certain framework and certain aspects to it, you can almost imagine the workflow to be fully automated end to end. An agent creating an RFI, sending it to a agent that is in the marketplace of the companies providing these services. You can have multiple agents respond to this RFI. And then the agent who sent the original RFI may say, okay, this is what the best response is, and chooses one response and then says, okay, here's the RFP. Then the same process happens again. And all of this may happen within minutes, hours at max,
Yeah,
rather than days and weeks as it happens today.
yeah,
And a decision can be made in the same day almost at the end of the day, obviously with a human interaction and human intervention necessary.
yeah.
But yeah, this is something that is really a very, let's say, flexible process compared to a predefined robotic process automation that
Yeah.
uh, uh, was in place in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've built data analytics, AI functions within a variety of enterprise corporations. What's been the biggest challenge in terms of getting some of these systems and tools into production? I'll give an example. I heard someone saying that still the cleanliness of the data is one of the challenges that we face. Whether it's a legal function where misspellings could be misinterpreted by the AI or things like this. So the cleanliness of the data still becomes a really critical piece. I don't know if that's your experience or
100%. I mean, we have a saying, garbage in, garbage out. The intelligence of any system depends upon the data that it actually is fed and it's acting upon. And so if you have a prompt that doesn't really fully capture what you want the agent to do, then the agent will do what the prompt tells it to do. And so, and that's even like, let's say, assuming the agent is coded and is acting upon the data that's fully clean. There's only one aspect where you can actually um, say mess up the flow by giving a wrong prompt that agent was not designed to act upon. But even at the core, the data that the agent uses, or even the agent system uses to train the agent, so train the system itself, a lot of times is not clean, and a lot of the let's say the traditional beliefs or traditional ways of operating, like if you look at a data scientist, where does he spend most of his or her time? It still is for the most part in getting, cleaning, and manipulating the data. 80% of the time goes to that, 20% of the time goes towards building algorithms.
Mm.
And it still applies in the agent world or AI world in general. If your data is not clean, then output will be not so intelligent. Um, in the way the organizations around data analytics are tackling these issues have been, first of all, have a platform that is scalable, that is ingesting the right data and accurate data that's representative of how the corporate entity works and how the customers interact with that corporation. Um, from the ingestion of the raw data to cleaning, manipulating, and making it useful, the entire flow needs to be properly designed and implemented and vetted by the experts that are either data engineers, data scientists, data analysts, or analytics engineers, or what have you, right? So that traditional workflow of analytics hasn't changed. So that's really, but I think one of the things that we learned over the last couple of years is the importance of understanding mapping a workflow correctly on top of
Mm.
the ingestion of the data. But the workflow, understanding the workflow is very important, because if you don't know what the workflow is, it still is um, a task that AI agent workflow operates upon. That's an assumption that that workflow is clear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Without that clarity, it doesn't matter how many agents you have. You don't know what you're automating, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Which moves it from, I suppose, the IT and technical teams into the business. Reading through your Harvard Business Review article around we're all programmers now, and the advent of citizen developers, it it seems like it's moving the development cycle from out of a pure IT technical infrastructure place, but into the business where the workflows are really taking place and giving capabilities to non-expert IT people to be able to build stuff essentially.
that is really the crux of the whole thing. That's really the at the core of this, let's say, interest and evolution of AI agents and implementation of it. Because, like I said, a workflow is more understood by the business and by
Mm.
the citizens of the corporation than an IT maybe department itself. And the person who is day in, day out interacting with the customer or a product knows that workflow better than anyone else. And he or she would have the best uh, view of that workflow, but also how that workflow would actually be implemented and designed in a way that's going to automate end to end and make his or her life better
Mm.
and faster and more responsive and more accurate and so on, so that the routine parts of that job is almost eliminated, but he or she can actually focus on the value added, the human uh, component of that workflow.
How do you manage the communication of that? Because obviously there's so much noise out in the world around sort of AI agents and replacing humans, replacing jobs. There's a natural fear factor for citizens in corporations that I'm going to be out of a job because my job's going to be automated. My view is that there's got to be a strong kind of internal comms piece in terms of, I suppose, the why you're doing it and what it's there for. But not, I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day who gave a great example of how that wasn't communicated and people started to go against the workflow just to show that it wouldn't work because they thought that they were going to lose their jobs. It was going to impact their bonuses, first of all, and then it was going to impact their jobs. They're going to be replaced. So how do you manage that? Because particularly in a large organization, that's a challenge.
Massive challenge, and incentive alignment is not there. And like you said, there are perceptions rather than reality that is playing a role there. It starts with education. It starts with what we call upskilling. It starts with the right incentives and right ownership of the processes. So, for example, if you um, uh, give, let's say, the right tools for the people who are inundated by routine tasks that is taking too much of their time every day, but rather they would focus on something that would actually bring value and tell them, hey, your value is going to be even higher if you come up with a better way of doing things using this is a tool, then it may be a better conversation than saying, hey, this tool is going to do what you're doing, so thank you, see you later. So that's it's almost like a empowerment and enrichment and augmentation rather than a replacement of a human, right? So I think the best kind of let's say way of thinking about that, I was talking to someone this week. Think about what we do in an empathetic way. So if there is a process that is quote unquote mindless because you just have to go through it,
Yeah.
and that's your job. There's no empathy in it. There's no human ownership and human contribution to that process. It's basically routine, mindless flow of things. That obviously will be completely automated, or it should be automated. But if you look at a flow that is needing and cannot exist without a human contribution, creativity, innovation, thinking outside the box, and implementing it in such a way that it will make a difference, which most of the citizen developers are able to do now, then really the combination of that human empathy with the tool that will allow them to do things at much bigger scale, then that really is now, instead of replacing people's jobs, it is augmenting and enriching them.
Yeah.
So that's how I would look at it.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're kind of pushing out some of this back into the business almost in a decentralized type of way rather than having a big centralized IT department. So could there be a situation where your IT, your traditional IT or technology department probably, after a period of building the right infrastructure, the right technology and so on, actually probably needs to reduce down a little bit, and it's pushed out into the business in order to develop that. I mean, again, I refer back to your Harvard Business Review article where governance and I suppose the oversight of some of these systems is also critical as well.
Correct. And I think that's what is also happening in organizations that are agile, that are transforming themselves to be more decentralized in certain areas so that the business can move faster. You're seeing more and more business data technology teams coming together. And they form sometimes what you call clusters or tribes or structures that are more end-to-end owning a process or a product and really coming together as one rather than separate entities and separate divisions to make that part of the business work the best and fastest as a requirement of an agile company. That doesn't mean that the central functions, which are functions, functionally coordinating these groups don't exist anymore. They just take a different perspective, different structure in which they are becoming more center of excellence, or they are
Yeah.
becoming centers of, let's say, governance and structuring innovation, coordinating, tooling, coordinating certain tasks that decentralized teams wouldn't do, or if they did it, they would slow down.
Mm.
So that's the kind of like the change in, it's almost like you go from central to hub and spoke kind of model,
Yeah. Yeah.
where the spokes are self-sufficient and they are owning the development, deployment, management, maintenance of the entire life cycle of a
Mm.
product. And the central teams are functionally coordinating across different spokes
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that the transversality is achieved. Um, so
Yeah. And so, I mean, it does sound like it's changing from an organizational design perspective. Obviously, there's the communication piece. You've done this in banks, in retail, where you are now at Decathlon. Um, where are some of these kind of change and transformation functions sat? Has it been under your new structure that you've built in terms of where are the transformation function and this is how we're going to translate and permeate that through the organization, or has it been pushed out into the business with squads or teams that have driven it at a small, more local level, as it were? What's worked? What hasn't worked?
I think it depends on the organization, how the organization is going through the transformation and what's the best um, cultural fit for the organization as well. In some organizations, this came out of the operations function headed by the chief operating officer. And in some functions, it came from tech, CTO even. But in general, it is a business ask. So business functions basically say, hey, this is the way we need to operate to serve the customer better or the best. And then the other functions kind of organize themselves to fit that ask.
No,
So it's generally business driven, business owned transformation that is supported by operations, tech, and data.
no, no. There's obviously a lot of legacy businesses out there. They see the value of this, its potential to, as you say, serve the customer better, but also improve efficiency and consistency. But a lot of these organizations struggle to change. The proverbial turning an oil tanker on a sixpence. You've worked in some of these, very legacy type organizations. What's been the biggest challenge that you've faced in terms of this?
I look at it as people, process, technology. And I have over, like you said, over different experiences across industries, companies, different cultures, I came to realize the easiest change is technology because anyone can take out a legacy system, replace it with something new. A migration to cloud from a complete legacy environment, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen eventually if the right budget and right focus is given. You can do the transformation to a new technology, no problem. Process is a bit harder because sometimes even the businesses don't really fully understand what the existing process is because they have been doing this forever and they never needed to map a process.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden somebody says, what's the process? And somebody has to design it. And then, so it takes a bit longer, but it's still doable. What is the longest and the hardest is the change in mindset. So the people piece,
Yeah.
the change in mindset, change in adoption, change in a new way of life, new way of working, that takes years. That takes it's the longest effort and time I think any business goes through and fails while doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
There's the people. And
Can I?
there's no cookie cutter way that applies to any, but it's like every business has its own culture and way of working. But I have found out that the companies that are ready for the change and has the right uh, focus, right CEO board level commitment for change, they are the ones who can actually succeed in the change. Um,
It's a fascinating piece. Is the psychology of that change and transformation from a practical perspective. You mentioned training and I suppose evolving people through that. We talked a little bit about the internal comms piece about it. So again, what's worked or what hasn't worked? What was the biggest lesson that you've learned when trying to go down this path? Because it's at the end of the day, adoption in the business is critical to success, right?
yes. Um, I think the clear answer to why are we needing the change and what is in it for the people to change and what happens if we do not change. Um, and these are easier said than done, but the message needs to be as clear as possible, and the outcomes that we are focusing to gain from this change are clear, and then the course to get there can be a little, let's say, sometimes, hey, we need to figure this out while we get there, but we are going to get there. So the direction, the steering is company wide, top down, and that is really clear to everybody. Then I think that works the best, because if that direction is lost and people start questioning why the change is happening, that creates immediate resistance to any kind of effort to change, even if the change is needed or even if the change is almost required.
Yeah.
People will not adopt, or people will not see why that they need to be part of this change. So I think what works is that the top-down adoption of the idea of the change and the direction needs to be crystal clear and transparent. And then I think the people will get that, and it's the message will needs to be consistent as well. Like it
Yeah.
cannot be that, okay, we say it one thing this year, we change the direction next year. And I have seen this also in many companies. That's something that is common quite across industries, that the companies who have attempted change over and over again, but it never went anywhere, people say, oh, okay, this is the flavor of the day, flavor of the year. If I wait long enough, it's going to blow over.
Mm.
So we have heard this many, many times. I have seen it many times. And, this kind of, let's say, credibility of the management and their commitment to change is always questioned, and then we need to make sure that that's not there, else that the change will fail.
I wanted to pull on that a little bit further because, having an aligned leadership team that are all committed to the outcomes and goals is the ideal, but so often there is resistance between egos, between competing agendas, between different budgets as well.
Yeah.
How do you get through that piece of it? Because that's, like you say, once you've got that agreement, commitment, at a board level. You can create the right messaging, consistency, and it can trickle down. But getting that alignment can be nigh impossible at times.
Yes. Yes. And I don't have a clear recipe on how to get that alignment. Because like I said, the people piece is the hardest in all of this. But I think the starting point, and again, this is based on what I have seen that worked maybe, or what I have seen that was a bit more successful than the others, is always start from the business and the customer.
Mm.
Because I strongly believe the customer is always right. And a company is there to serve a customer, and whoever that customer is, and whatever that is. And losing focus of that is going to create a lot of spin, a lot of misalignment of all kinds.
Mm.
And I believe everybody aligns around the fact that everybody's there to have a bit successful business, which starts with the customer, ends with the customer. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can argue, hey, why are we here? When you say, hey, well, we are here because we need to serve our customer the best way, and that's the only way. But from there on, like once that is clear to everybody, I think um, obviously I come from a data background, so everything is in creating transparency and making decisions based on facts, and really the facts that are trusted, that allows a business to steer the business the best way is the way to steer and create alignment around, hey, are we in the right path? Is this working? What is working? What is not working? What do we need to clear? Do we need to change course? Do we need to clear certain aspects of what we are doing so that we get better alignment? Um, uh, Maybe I'm a wishful thinker in this, but I believe the successful businesses, if you look at companies around the world that are really successful, mostly tech, they make decisions based on facts and data,
Yeah.
and they respond fast to the data they observe, collect, and see from the customers, and they react to it as fast as possible. They learn, they optimize from the failures. They learn and they change things and they course correct. Again, all based on facts.
Yeah. Can you give an example of, I suppose, the business impact and I suppose the value creation of implementing this? And then a second aspect to it is there a prioritization in terms of functions or particular processes that you would prioritize first if you're kind of starting on this journey in a new organization?
Um, Hard to say. I think it's the strategy first that needs to be put in place. It's short-term, long-term strategy and the balance therein. A lot of companies tend to have strategy that's quarterly. They stick to quarterly results. That tends to be more short-sighted, needed, but short-sighted sometimes. So it needs to be balanced with longer-term strategy, 3 to 5 years out. And the highest, obviously, priority is with the first line businesses facing the customer, facing the partners, so on. And then comes the second line. But generally, I have seen transformation follows clear strategy, longer term strategy, balanced out with shorter term strategy, enabled by the support functions that are going to make that strategy come to life. And a lot of times it is driven by chief operating officer, lined up with chief technology officer or technology functions, and them combined would make the business objectives come to life.
So is the business case in terms of the value, is that more around efficiency, reduced costs, and higher customer satisfaction scores, or is it improving margins, or what's the main numbers that people can get behind and sort of really, because that, as you say, it's about the facts and figures that help
Yeah.
define and get that alignment, because that's what impacts everybody.
Yeah. I think it depends on the industry. It depends on the company, but it mostly depends on the industry. In financial services, I have seen cost efficiency being the driver. Obviously, revenue is important, but cost efficiency is key because of the cost income ratio has to be a certain level. In retail, it's margin, revenue, then cost. But obviously, if it tips towards the cost way more than the revenue generated, that becomes lopsided operation. So we need to pull back cost as well. But a lot of times it's a balance between revenue margin and cost. And efficiency obviously comes in either reducing the technology cost, like legacy systems, that is costly to maintain and operate, as opposed to just pure headcount.
Yeah. A couple of kind of closing questions as we come towards the end of our time. AI is evolving at a rapid pace. So I think we saw through December new models being dropped left, right, and center. How does that impact you and your team's ability to deploy and put things into production? Because if the back end is changing, or is it you're using different models and we'll use that until it becomes obsolete? How does that work?
I subscribe to an operating model where, because of what you just said, because the LLMs or even agent infrastructures change in a rapid pace. And so what is key to actually have in place is a flexible enough environment, platform interface, so that we can plug and play different LLMs for the tasks that they are good at, or they are better at, let's put it that way. The second piece is there has to be a clear path from testing, development to production. So that is attained a lot of times via a proper MLOps pipeline, or rather CI/CD pipelines that are going to allow a data scientist or an AI engineer to be able to deploy in production a solution that is tested and proven that it works. And in between, in digital environments, obviously, is a requirement nowadays. You need to be able to have a proper testing, A/B testing or whatever kind of testing needed to test algorithms, AI outputs. I'm thinking like product recommendations. You need to be able to test one algorithm versus the other in a environment where maybe a certain percentage of the traffic is real with real customers, so that you can actually see what works properly before you deploy it in front of a customer. This is, I think, especially true if the interface that is to be deployed is Gen AI driven, because of a lot of things. One is the AI interfaces, LLMs rather, are hallucinating for the most part. They can do things that are not intended for the customer, so the customer can be confused as to what is this interface telling me. So it's absolutely important to have the right guardrails and governance in place to be able to deploy any Gen AI solution in front of a customer before it's really tested and proven. I recommend not to do that. Yeah.
I had an example of that last week. Someone was saying to me that in car rental, a customer was in Croatia and was talking to the chatbot, "Can I leave my car here?" Chatbot said, "Yeah, that's fine." Absolutely wasn't. So the
Exactly.
question is
Yes.
then who's going to own the cost of repatriating that car, or the issue is it, can you tell off, or can you
Yeah.
um, you know, take issue with the
Yeah.
AI? But
Yeah. Yeah.
who's to
Exactly.
take a good idea?
Yeah. Exactly. Somebody in the past, a few years back, we were talking about a different context, not the AI itself, but it was more machine learning algorithms in the context of financial services. And he was rightfully almost saying, "Hey, uh, I cannot put a machine learning algorithm to jail if it does something that is completely unacceptable, but I can the person who wrote it." So I think it still applies over here. So we better be careful on how we are using these things and what we are using them for, and we need to make sure they are tested before it's deployed.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, that makes the guardrails particularly important, right? And I suppose
Extremely.
that's probably a big question as to who's going to own that and how is it going to be quantified as well going forwards, because the development is happening at such a pace that it's hard to keep up. It must be hard to keep up with things.
Exactly. And that's also what's the right balance because we don't want to slow down things if something is working for the sake of actually controlling it.
Mm.
What's the right flavor? What's the right balance of putting the guardrails and uh, checks and balances in place? You cannot do without it, but you also cannot do with too much of it. So
I mean, I heard a quote that some of these models are operating at almost 96% accuracy, but I like the idea of, okay, well, if I give you $100, are you going to give me $96 back? And is that going to be acceptable?
exactly,
How
exactly.
high a percentage of accuracy do you need in order to be comfortable with it?
Exactly. And is accuracy the right KPI or is it
Yeah.
something else? So,
What other KPIs would you put with?
uh, hmm, talking about customer net promoter score, uh, how many times a recommendation is made and was uh, deemed as not appropriate, because it's not the accuracy anymore, it's the context
Mm.
of the recommendation. Is the context right? Um, is the intent right? Right, so that those are different than just pure accuracy. I can give you a massively accurate algorithm that is completely off the context and has nothing to do with what the customer is looking for. So then you have an
Yeah.
accurate algorithm, which is great, but not so
But
useful.
completely useless. That's it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
very good. Very good. Final question then before we wrap up. And I really appreciate your time, Karen. It's very fascinating
My
topic.
pleasure.
Super interesting. What can people in business do in order to, I suppose, future-proof themselves? As I say, there is this fear. The people part is the most difficult, but do they need to take responsibility for their own training and development in these kind of tools and software, or is it the companies, role to I suppose upskill their employee population? Because that seems to be a kind of big question for organizations right now. Not only the organizational design, but then actually how do we, what do we invest in these people? Because some people won't get it and will kind of fall by the wayside anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a responsibility of both, to be honest, because I think and somebody that actually a professor at MIT when I was taking a class there, he said it rightfully so. Um, the AI systems are now able to let's say cover the entire history of the humankind in terms of the knowledge. Everything we have generated and the entire existence of the humankind is now in the systems that are giving us the answers. So, so essentially, there's nothing really we can compete on in terms of the sheer knowledge itself, because we cannot compete with that. But what we can compete with is the continuous adaptation, learning, creativity, and what makes a human human is really where we need to focus on. We need to keep on developing ourselves around, because it's not just reading a book that's going to get us to, I mean, I'm not saying don't read a book anymore, but it's not going to get us to succeed. We need to improve our emotional intelligence more so than pure hard skill. That used to be, I guess, the core differentiator of a professional, but the barrier to entry is kind of disappearing. Like we said, like a citizen developer can create a code and an application as good as a professional coder who has been there for decades.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody's going to say, "Yeah, that's not true," but hey, it used to be, the barrier used to be even higher. Let's put it
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
yeah.
It's it's,
Well,
it's
that's it.
it's no longer huge.
Yeah, it's reducing those barriers down,
Yeah.
and
So I
like you
think
said,
the key is to continuously learn, continuously adopt, continuously uh, let's say if they have an open mind to try new things and learn and adapt. That's what makes us human. And I think both companies and individuals play a role in being able to do so. And so I think yeah, it's both.
yeah. I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit hole with that. That's that's a big old topic, but I'm conscious of time. So, Karen, thank you so much for
Thank
taking the time
you.
to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. It's a super fascinating topic. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how best I could put your LinkedIn if they want to reach out and find out more. But thank you so much, and I really appreciate it, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you. Looking forward. Great to have this conversation with you, and hope to talk to you soon again.
Thanks, Karen. Bye bye.
Bye.